Well, welcome back to More About Birth. I'm really excited about this segment because you have a special guest. And before we introduce her, you have your natural pain relief class coming out, or actually you've been doing your class for years, but you have your manual coming out. And one of those things in the manual that you shared with me is different tools for women to deal with pain during labor. And so one of those things is what we're going to talk about today, probably more than just that one thing. But so would you introduce our special guest today?
This is my friend, Debra Nelson Thorpe, and we lovingly call her the water birth lady. She has a company that produces OASIS Elite and OASIS birth pools that all of the midwives in our area use. And I thought it would be fun to have her here today to talk about how that all came about. How'd you end up making birth pools?
Well, thanks for having me here. It's so great to be with you and to meet your husband. And it happened organically because I was attending births back when water birth was just coming into vogue. And as a home birth midwife, if your clients say, hey, I want to do this, you just say, okay. And it was having their babies in water. And we would run out in early summer and buy all those little fishy pools you cut off the shelf because
or
they're
those
there.
Horrible old stock tanks that killed your knees when you would kneel in them. Right.
They're hard. Right. And so we would grab all these pools we could, and then they're gone until next summer. And then I started distributing a brand out of Europe, and then decided that I can learn how to do that too, and jumped into manufacturing and customizing the brand to meet the needs of the birthing parent and the midwife.
So there really were no outlets for birth pools for a parent to just go online and purchase one?
Not until 2005 when I launched my business. Barbara Harper for a while.
Yeah, and she used to go around and
had
speak.
Marketed a brand, and it didn't last very long. But I was the first company in the U.S. to have a retail outlet for products, and we started with just the Intex fishy pools, and then went into a European brand.
Delivered a few babies in a fishy pool.
Yeah, they work. I mean, it's the same
enough.
principle, right? They're just
not deep
little
enough.
bit. Yeah, and the material isn't as
you worry about it
peeling,
popping.
Yeah.
So now that you let the cat out of the bag that I'm the husband, not just the executive producer, I remember a home birth with our last child. And I watched you during all the births. And for some reason, that birth was a way better birth for you. Because
the minute I got in that pool, it was like 30% reduction in my personal pain.
We call it the awe response.
Yeah.
It's awe. It's you get in there like if you were jogging or skiing, you put yourself in warm water. Our muscles know to relax. Yep. It releases tension hormones out of the muscles. And there's nothing wrong about it.
We lovingly call it the aquadural. We don't have epidurals at home, but we have the aquadural. And I tell people in my class, it's like when you have the flu and you just ache all over, you feel cruddy. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can take Tylenol, ibuprofen. No matter what you do, you just hurt. But you can get in a hot bath and just soak, and you feel great.
Right.
And it's kind of that same thing.
Right, and it also cradles you. So mammals like to be in small spaces when they labor for feeling safe.
That security.
Compared to that great big huge open room with bright lights. Yep. Known as the hospital. But even having a cradle in any environment, home, hospital, birth center, a birthing parent's going to feel more secure and more in control because you're letting go in labor. So to go into that outer space headspace, you need to feel secure. And the pool really gives you that space. The water releases tension in the muscles and softens the perineal tissue. So there is
the pelvic floor is able to relax better.
Nothing wrong about it. You get a little bit of buoyancy, so a woman can move her pregnant body so much easier
to move.
And women will move their pelvis a lot more in labor than on land, and the baby moves through the pelvis. And as the baby turns through the pelvis, the mother will move her body, and the water really facilitates that.
So I think there's like a a misunderstanding about water birth or even laboring in the water. People think it's only us crazy home birthers who can use a birth pool or a labor pool. So can you talk a little bit about the other options?
Thank you to every woman in the 70s who bravely stepped away from the medical model and had their babies outside of the cultural norm and then used water, because it's people who step outside of normal practices that help pave the way to greater understanding. Every woman in every labor, comfort tools are super important. Feeling secure, feeling informed, and having what you need at arm's length for having greater comfort as your labor progresses. And water is super important. To me, it's up there with the person you love the most and feel the safest with, and the care provider you trust the most.
I just recently had a lady that I deliver babies for. Her daughter got married, moved away, and she's now expecting. And this previous client called me and she said, so her midwife doesn't have access to a birth pool. And I said, well, hey, here's a website. You can order one. Just go to yourwaterbirth.com and there's great pools on there. She said, well, and then there's the TENS unit. We don't have a TENS unit available. And I said, I can send you one to borrow if you'd like. She says, well, out of the two, which do you think would be the most important? And I said, water by far. Get the birth pool.
Right.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you this. So what was the launching pad for you for just the whole idea of going into this pool side of it? Because you have history, right? You were a midwife and still are, really, right?
So, yes, I will always be a midwife. And even though I'm not attending, it's a very passionate thing for me. And when being that I was practicing in the home environment, I wasn't subjective to a lot of restrictions or dogma through a hospital or through a large practice. And so you tend to follow your clients. And when your clients start asking for water, you're like, okay, so you go home and you read about it. And then it just evolved on its own. And love those water labors and water births. And they actually were better for me. And the outcomes were very nice. And then in the early 90s, started attending conferences and stuff, and it was taking up speed and momentum and being talked about a lot more. And the woman we adore, Barbara Harper, who did tons of research and now travels
in fact, you
the globe.
Organized one of her
I did host a workshop for her.
Was it in Ellensburg?
It was in Moses Lake.
So percentages back, so we're talking 18 years ago for your water birth. So percentages of people doing water births when you were a midwife, do you have an idea of a concept of what it was then and what you guys see now? Because I don't think there was a lot happening.
Really fast. And so in the early 90s, it was mostly what we call land birth. And then in the late 90s, it was really picking up to 30%, 80%. And now I think
I'd say
with
95%
most home birth midwives, it's
clients.
a very, very high percentage. I think some women will live in areas where there's just a lack of exposure to birth options, and those women may be less inclined to ask for it. But across the board of types of clients, religious, education, even women who've had land births before that have water births, they don't go back.
I have a lot of medical professionals that want to do a home birth just so they can use the birth pool.
Right.
But we kind of got off the topic. I want the audience to know more about the use of birth pools for labor in birth centers, in the hospital.
Right.
How does that work?
I encourage people to find the right care provider and find out what is available for them to use in the environment they're choosing to labor and birth in. Most people who choose to go out of the home to have their babies will travel when they're further along in labor so they can actually provide themselves with comfort measures at home during labor, and they can have a pool in their house, even use the shower, hot tub, whatever.
Right, just because you're planning a hospital birth doesn't mean you
It does
can't
not
labor in the
negate
birth
it.
pool.
Exactly. You should still have all those tools. And then if you're going into a facility, leaving home, find out what the different facilities have. It's kind of part of the picking process. I mean, think about the end what your birth looks like, and then try to find the care provider in the facilities before
That
you fall
fits.
in love with your care provider, because it's really hard to change and then get down the road and realize they're not going to meet your needs.
And a lot of the hospitals and birth centers have,
some built-in units,
right. And some of them have jets, some of them don't, some of them are deeper than others.
So one of the things
there are options.
You said, Shannon, that people have a tendency, when they really get educated, they start getting this picture of what will be comfortable for them, the least painful, the best environment. And that's what you're talking about.
Right.
Before you ever get down this path, once you're educated and you have this ability to make a choice, now you're going to have to look all the way down the path and say, okay, so if I am birthing at home or I'm birthing at a hospital, do I want to pool there? And if I love that, because I had it last time, now are they going to offer anything like that when I go in? Because it's still okay to go in if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
But to have choices and options, that's what we're talking about. And that's education.
And depending on you and the work you want to do as the birthing family, I mean, I have had contact with a lot of birthing families who pushed water birth into their hospitals. Typically, there's a nurse midwife attached to the facility who has the mindset, but she hasn't been able to push it through at the hospital.
Right.
And then the consumer is the one who drives that force.
Yeah.
So, but it depends on your personality and how much you're willing to give energy-wise to that process. So ideally, you can find something easily that allows you to create that picture at the end. So I really encourage people to look at immediate postpartum pictures and see what appeals to you. The security of the hospital, that, I call it a false security, but to you, if that looks good to you, great.
Right.
Or that the softer look of the home without all the bells and whistles and wires and the pools. And so you can bring water to any environment, because the pools that we market are inflatable and portable and super easy to use. All of our instructions come with.
Oh, yeah. You brought a tiny
Down
sample. Is it down there? Yeah. So talk about that. So you did this version for...
It's to be marketed with dolls that are handmade by a woman in Canada through a company called MomAmor dolls. And these dolls are very high quality, handmade, and there's a place within the design of the mama doll to hold the baby doll, and the baby can be delivered. There's a placenta and an umbilical cord. The baby can attach to the mama's breasts using snaps on the baby and the mama. But they're designed to allow children to play in this manner that they don't get to with other dolls. I mean, they can breastfeed their baby dolls, but they can't play birth with their dolls.
No, and if we teach our children that is a normal, natural process.
Right. Oh, you hand them the dolls and don't say a word. They know what to do.
Can I just say, I had a fire truck when I was young. I didn't have a birth doll, but I guess that's...
You should see boys with these dolls.
I know. I
They
guess
love
that's
these dolls.
the difference. That's mind-boggling to me, because the culture is changing now. Because we had those tools. We were just talking about for our grandson that we want to get him the truck that lifts and all that stuff so he can work. Thinking about this, letting them have this idea and this experience so they can start thinking about this whole... That's amazing, because the dolls are changing.
We play to normalize, and if you are pregnant in this generation, you are talking to your children. And this is just another tool, and I wish I would have brought one of the dolls with me, but the pool is a part of the very commonplace thing, water in labor now. And so this allows the children to play.
Well, and the fun thing is this actually looks like one of the full-size pools. They have nice soft sides, and they have a nice soft blow-up bottom.
Right. And so comfort is important. I mean, yes, a hospital can have a fiberglass pool, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And so what's great about inflatable systems is it provides comfort for leaning, and a lot of women will do little quick cat naps in between contractions, and they'll drape themselves over the pools. But it also allows your care provider, when she's tending to you, to lean on something soft too.
And we do.
Yes.
So when we get back from the break, Deborah, I would really like to talk about the thought process that went into your own pool line.
Okay.
And just where that feedback came from, because you had ability to get pools, and then you decided to start your own line. Right. And I know that when Shannon talks about the pool that you came up with, the one that she loves, there's some real thought behind that. That's real birth specific. So when we get back from the break, so first of all, thank you for being our guest. We're going to talk more, and this is more about birth. We will be right back after the break. Well, welcome back to this podcast. We're excited to have Debra Nelson Thorpe with us. And you have a great product here in OASIS, water birth pools. And I know you and Shannon have some history, but I really wanted to dive into the idea of your own line. Where did that come from? How did it go from you getting product from another designers and distributors to creating your own product? What drove that?
Primarily was wanting to have a U.S. brand. The other two companies are based out of the U.K. and owned by men. And
all bad.
No. It was just that I was the U.S. midwife, the person who really knew the U.S. market, and realized that there's no reason why I can't learn the manufacturing end of things and incorporate some design features that I thought that were important from listening and learning.
It's kind of hard to be creative if you don't get there when the clay's soft, right? When it's already all put together and boxed up, you can't put your fingerprints on it. So what's unique about your line, and how does it take this to a different direction for pools in the U.S. market?
Well, me.
Yes.
And just the foundation of the brand and it being a U.S. product, and it's the color I really like. But in general, inflatable pools are all inflated. Right. They're soft. They hold water, so they all serve the similar purpose. Right. But primarily it was to be able to develop a U.S. brand that allows me to reach out to the U.S. market and to help other women wanting to go into business to, for elevating their life or to serve their communities. And so we do offer wholesale marketing. And I think just to be able to have a little more control over the chain, of being able to be in control of manufacturing and marketing. And just simple little feature differences was like really dialing in the size to get it kind of the right size. And then I offered 2 different sizes. I have a lot of midwives that are under 5'5" that love the shorter pools because they don't feel like they're leaning over swimming. Exactly. Yes. And then, and price does matter. And so I have 2 price lines, so the pools run from $80 up to $125. Okay. And price doesn't necessarily dictate quality in this market. I was able to select a material that was super high grade. And so the whole concept of a professional birth pool is kind of a misconception. It's the same as the non-professional, it's just heavier material. Right. So we went out the door, we went after the best material that's actually even lighter. And so for me, I want the midwife to be comfortable. Right. Our product weighs 16 pounds instead of 20 some pounds. Okay. It makes a difference. It really makes a difference in carrying these products.
It fits in the bag nicely.
Right. And it's about it being lightweight, affordable, and of good quality. And
to meet the needs of the moms.
Right. And we constantly are incorporating different or improvements, like a better floor that helps keep a mother up off the hard floor below. She has tender knees in
And I especially love the new
air valve that quickly inflates and quickly deflates.
Yes, that has been great.
Yeah. Yep.
So you have a history, you two, working together and been on trips together. So talk a little bit about that, Shannon, your history with Deborah.
We met years ago at your sister's birth.
Wow.
Yes.
So quite a few babies ago.
Yeah.
And kind of hit and miss after that. We went to conferences, where we were both at the conference. Went to a water birth conference that Deborah organized.
Well, and being a midwife is a small world.
And as midwives, especially in this area, it's not true for all areas. In fact, we have been really blessed here with the community of midwives that we have. We all know each other. We've all been friends. We all support each other and consult each other. So over the years, it's been that relationship.
It's been fun watching Shannon develop into a full-fledged midwife and watch her business grow.
She knew me when I was a student midwife.
So I think it's just anytime you meet someone who's moving in that direction, you want to do everything you can to encourage and support and to be there. Because it is a journey and it goes up and down and
need somebody to call and
it's so true that having someone that thinks the same way, I mean, you have so much in common. I mean, if you take away the pool side of you, there's a lot of similarities, but if you insert the pool, you're using them.
Right.
You know, and you're manufacturing them. So that relationship, I think, is so important just to our growth. So we were talking earlier and something stood out to me that you said. Number one, there's a desperate need for education out there when it comes to birth. Right. And you even have family that are making decisions for birth. But you travel a lot, and you said there's certain things that when you get a chance to seek out people.
Right.
What's your passion when it comes to education when you're out there? Because you have huge influence because of where you are and where you've been positioned. So you're a voice out there, and people come to listen to you. So what are you looking for? What are you trying to educate on? What's your hidden passion when it comes to that?
I think that I want midwives and birthing families to have easy access to the tools that allow them to complete that picture at the end. To have a family-centered birth, to have pictures that show them coping, and that birth's not out of control. And I think that water birth having a water tool is very, very important. And so for me in general, when I'm out, if it's at a conference with my peers, it's just introduction to my brand and that this is a U.S. business and U.S. customer service, and that we're here to listen. And I'm constantly trying to create new products for the midwives as well as the birthing family.
And when Deborah first came up with this idea, she sent the midwives that are part of her circle.
You guys are my test
prototypes,
Yes.
and
Awesome.
she listened to our comments about what we would like and what worked and what didn't. And
because I have to step outside of my box to be able to know what really is going to work. And so for as far as birthing families, for me, it's really important that they do look at the end picture of the story they're hoping that they can tell down the road, and then the educational path to get there, to understand what steps they can take that's going to help them actualize their goal, and then to know that they have the power to be in control of making decisions if their birth steps outside of that picture. Because you talk to a family that originally had a plan for example, if they're going to have a home birth and this is their plan, and they end up having a cesarean in the hospital. A lot of times the decision was made amongst the group and it made sense, and they still had a great experience, and they feel very empowered by having had that full education, and they knew what the end picture they wanted, but they don't have grief over how they got there. And that's a different story than somebody who doesn't understand and they step on the train that takes them down a track they didn't think they were going to be subjected to. They thought perhaps just naively that I'm not going to have that experience.
So people ask me, well, is it really sanitary to have a baby in the birth pool because you're kind of sitting in whatever?
Right. Well, everything that's in the water is from you. And so, and if there's any bacteria that's coming from you, your body already has the antibodies for that. So it's perfectly safe. It's other people's bacteria that is an issue. So it should be your space and your germs.
Right.
But it is, as I've mentioned, Barbara Harper, she says like dilution's a solution. So if you have, so if you have, 100 gallons of water, and if there's a little bit of urine or fecal material in the water, it's really not a big deal. And you know what? You're not going to care.
Yeah.
You're really not going to care. Home birth in general is very safe. There really is no such thing as truly sanitary.
No.
You just use common sense practices.
People freak out. One of the other questions I get all the time is, what if I poop? And I'm you probably will. we have a fishnet. You won't even know we were.
And then a good midwife doesn't talk about it afterwards.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all about you being comfortable and feeling safe and secure. And then when you're in labor, that people allow you to go into that birth place in your head.
You know, I actually had a gal one time. I was assisting at a birth with another midwife, and this lady enjoyed her space so much, her little just cave that she had created in this birth pool. It was dark in the room. When she would have a contraction, she would hold her breath and go under the water during the contraction.
She was taking away sound too.
That's great for her, but I'm like, you and your baby both could use some oxygen.
Right.
But it was amazing.
Yeah.
She found a way even in the birth pool to take it to the next level.
Right. And babies do not inhale birth water. They have what's known as the dive reflex. You can look it up. It's super simple. Right. But they need to have their face stimulated by oxygen for them to breathe. So there's no chance of them inhaling any water. And as we all are learning about the microbiome, babies need to encounter female bacteria, just the excretions from their mother, and they've been able to show that the babies still are colonized with their mother's bacteria, even in water birth.
Yeah, I've had that question too. Well, if they need that bacteria and we're diluting it, there's still enough in there, right? People ask me also, like, how long does it take to blow it up? How long does it take to fill it?
Right. So depending on your water pressure at home and the air pump you have, the air pumps that we sell, and most air pumps can have these pools inflated 5-10 minutes at the most.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever spent more than 5 minutes blowing up.
And then if your water pressure is weak, it could take a while, but your care provider will encourage you on how to adjust your hot water tank.
Right.
And to just kind of have an idea how long it takes for you to fill your bathtub. It's about the same amount of water.
And a lot of times I'll have them turn the hot water tank up the day
increase
of the
the
birth.
temperature, right.
And how long do they stay warm once they're full?
So air walls are great insulators. So if you start with temperature that's a little bit up above the body, the material will absorb some heat, but they typically stay warm for like 5 hours or more. And I actually had a midwife that was so bored at birth because there's nothing she could do. She started noting temperature times and when it would change. And she said it was around 5 hours, the temperature starts to drop. But keep in mind, there is no rule on temperature.
Right.
So as your labor is advancing, you're working harder. It's like any other job you're doing. You're getting warmer, and you want to have the environment around you cooler.
Right.
So if the mother's enjoying the temperature of the water, there's no need to increase it.
What temperature do you usually suggest that you start with?
Around 100 degrees body temp. So if you put your hand in the water, if it feels a little bit warmer. And if you start with the pool half full, add mom, and then follow her lead. Do the temperature she wants. I've had moms have really warm water. And moms have really cold water. I tend to shy away from the really
warm water because
I've only had it happen once.
Can make baby a little anxious.
Right. So if the baby's heart rate starts to go up and the water is warm, you can try cooling it down and have her take some good deep breaths to see if that improves things. And then as the temperature decreases, it really is totally fine.
It's perfect because she's hot.
She's hot. And then her chest is like the world's best heating blanket. And so ideally, your birthing parent knows to have a bare chest. So the baby goes on that. And the only reason a baby would need warming is if you are not getting a nice pink baby, then you're going to want to potentially take the baby out of the water. And then we'll even have families that are prepared to do a little Laboyer warm bath in the sink to help warm the baby
And
up.
what are your thoughts on delivering the placenta in the pool?
It's perfect. They float.
So does a little silver bowl that we
They
put them
do,
in.
right. And so it's very nice for the third stage of labor for the mother to stay in the water. It helps her relax. She can keep the baby with her. They can have some bonding. The baby can stay in the water.
And we can still assess the amount of bleeding in the water.
Exactly.
We can
It's
still
very, very easy.
check mom's belly to make sure that things are firm like they should be. Another question I get a lot is, what is it going to cost?
So the pools that we sell range from $80 to $125, and you can purchase brands up into the $200. And
how do I know which one I would want then?
well, start with the money. Money works as far as a decision. They're all comfortable and they all hold water. So you have your water. That's the primary goal. And then if you are worried about the depth, it's the ideal goal is to have your pregnant belly submerged in water. It's ideal to keep your breasts out so the baby can nurse right away, which helps with the release of the placenta. But you can go deeper if that's what you want in labor. And so you can measure yourself two ways. You can sit on the floor and measure from the floor to below your breasts to get, I'm like 15 inches, I think. And then you can go on your hands and knees. Most women will labor in a hands and knee position. So you can use the edge of your couch, pretend that you're leaning on the side of a pool and measure from the floor so that your belly's hanging. And your upper back, your buttocks will probably be up and out of the water a little bit. And for me, that's 17 inches. So depending on where your height is carried, from knees to hips, or if you're sitting from your hips to your chest, is the depth.
What about like circumference?
So the interior space is what matters more than the exterior space. Unless you have a tiny house, then you may want a smaller pool. So looking at the internal measurements gives you that space. And birth is not a body extended experience. It's a folded body experience. Women rarely extend their legs, and they tend to be folded and kind of stay in this position when they're laboring and birthing. And so the only reason there's round birth pools on the market is because we started with those round fishy pools. But oval is so ideal because it allows a longer length or a shorter length across if a woman will use the side of the pool for assist with pushing.
The pools that you have now, some of them have handles on them, some of them do not.
Well, and handles are not used organically by women, but a care provider can ask them to use them for a supported squat or for just, they'll grab them getting in and out of the pool for stability. But even our shortest pools that are 22, 24 inches, for most women, they're still deep enough unless you are really tall and want to have that added depth.
I actually have several pools because I've had moms that are 6 feet. I've had moms that are 5'1". And you sure don't want to put a 5'1" mom in the pool that a 6 foot mom uses because she'll get lost in it and you will go swimming.
Exactly. It's really hard to assist a delivery when
in fact,
she's
Angie,
so far away.
my student, there's a pool that we have. She goes, please throw that pool away. Please don't bring that pool to births anymore because she's not very tall. And she ends up soaked.
It'll be soaked. She could have it as a hot tub for outside.
So how do they find you in your pools? And then there's a discount available for them, right?
Right. So my retail website is yourwaterbirth.com. And we have a really great directory of care providers, and you can often do a name search and see if your midwife is in there. And she'll typically have a 10% coupon attached to her name that you can use in the checkout process to save a little money.
Which
it helps reduce
covers your shipping.
Exactly. And if she's not registered there, it's a super quick process that she can do.
Awesome. Well, it's been amazing. I've learned a lot listening to you guys talk stuff that, and about the choices and how you make a decision, what size pool and the reasons behind what you've done here. So we're so excited that you were on the podcast.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah, and there's probably we'll have to talk some more. There's all kinds of things about home birth and even some stories that I have being a part of a home birth myself. And so we appreciate you, Deborah, for being on the podcast. And we will be back again. So we hope you will join us here on More About Birth for more great conversations like this. See you next time.
See you later.